this series that I did over the last 3 days. And this series that I did, it proliferated at the same time as what I understand is that both the United States and another nation have exchanged military blows. And I had made a content that was in that vein. I've made different content on this channel talking about some of my understanding of the military. And one thing I want to point out is, I'm riffing upon a lot of this, and I'm extrapolating a lot of this based on the works of Tashik Bey. And he says that if you go back in colonialism, but before colonialism was expansionism, like the Roman Empire, we would say colonialism as in the colonies, but that's an extension of, and that's the reality of expansionism through the Roman Empire. That's seamless over. You would say, because some would say, so there's BC and AD. That was debunked for political expedience, from the before the Christian era and after the death of Christ. But the actual meaning of those numbers, and what's more significant than the figure Jesus Christ as the bookkeeping goes, is the Roman Empire itself. And that's for at least the significance of that would be for the last what's called 2,000 years. And then before that, in the BC, or before Common Era, or before Christ. But that's still the Roman calendar, the Greco-Roman calendar, and the Roman bookkeeping of debts and ledgers and surplus. That's still at play, and it's intergenerational. It's intercentury, intergenerational wealth. You can extrapolate that without. And I want to say, some people might watch a video like this, and you'd say, like, where are you fact checking like that, and what are your references? But I grew up. My father was an academic growing up. And one of the most unsufferable things is to be in an academic venue, and even to grow up in an academic household, because there's something so fleeting and superficial about doing research at someone else's behest, or to prove a point. So like my dad he would pour through books, he would rifle through books, and he would lift references and resources, because that's what the profession of an academic is. But that doesn't mean that you know more of what you're talking about or not, because I think that your mind knows. You don't actually come into new knowledge. You are knowledge when you're born. And then when you learn something, you recognize learning is imitation in the first place, and then recognition from imitation. But you all things are actually you. So you're imitating yourself. What in this life, what inspires you, you imitate, but you're already that, which is why it inspires you. And then once you recognize yourself as it, now you know it, you understand it. But you don't knowledge is not imparted into you. Like, for example, if I'm talking, if someone's looking at this video, nothing is going inside of your mind. Nothing actually comes. It's strange. Your mind doesn't actually go out of your head, out of yourself. Your whole entire life is an experience of within. You don't actually experience your external environment. You perceive your environment, but you actually experience only yourself, and your environment is yourself. Like, sometimes people say, like, hey man, if you mess with me, I'll fuck you up. What that means is, if you really got fucked up by something, by a person, or by, say, a mishap, that seamlessness of the experience of life, of having an experience of outer and within, that would be conflated if you had enough of trauma or enough of impact, and it would confound you. But the deeper thing is that you're experiencing life, and other people are as you. So your own actual reasoning is as much of a reference, as much of understanding, as something that you would cite, or that you would look into, unless you looked into it based on your own true interest and initiative. So I'm basing a lot of my comments off of things that I've looked into with my interest and initiative, but I'm not looking for things to cite on for the sake of sounding congruent or cohesive. And then that's based on the insight of Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He's a great thinker. He had been a pit trader on Wall Street, and then he turned into an academic because he had things that he wanted to. He was interested in knowledge for the sake of it. But he had his interest in knowledge was a little bit different than Western notions, because he's from Lebanon, I think, where a lot of the deep knowledge and a lot of human understandings come from. And they have different values of, if you go to different places of the world, they have different values of what class means, and what excellence means. Like, I met a lot of people wouldn't appreciate anybody that talks a lot or talks fast in English, but I met, and people like people that are shut up it. But I met an actual TIE fighter last summer in Minnesota, and he spoke very little English, and he had been practicing feints with his feet, but I had been practicing footwork in California before that in the hospital, and so I asked him like if he has like a pedigree with what he's doing, and then he told me I talked to him. I'd been on a motorcycle that summer, and I was like, man, if I ever went to Thailand, like, should I try to do something with motorcycles? He's like, nah, man, there's already enough of motorcycles, but they would appreciate your English over there, because in actual, most people can't stand people that talk. But if you actually got around somebody that doesn't talk, they exactly appreciate somebody that talk, because the exception proved the rule. So he was saying that he appreciates English, but that's a deeper thing in that in Asia, they honor learning differently, and also communication, and because communication is part of learning. But in the Lebanon, like, they also honor different things. They honor education also, but education differently, and also generosity. Like, if in some parts of the Middle East, being generous is actually better than having. If you can bestow gifts on people, if you can take care of people, that's like the essence of being a man, or being a provider, according to Nassim Nicholas Taleb. But he also says that he appreciates when people talk about books that they've actually read because they're interested in them, not because they were doing research to prove a point. So I'm just saying that a lot of my commentary is extrapolation, but I'm trying to be coherent about where I'm extrapolating from. But according to Tajik Bey, Tashrik Bey is a man from Trinidad, but he's also a leader in the descendants, people that understand themselves as descendants of the Moorish Empire. And he levels groundbreaking, fascinating insights about the globe, but also America. For example, he would say that the word America, it doesn't refer to Americo Vespucci, the Italian person. It actually refers to Morocco. America is Morocco. It's the most western extension of the Moroccan Empire, and the footing and the power in America, it broke down and was inherited from the Moorish line. And I think the furthest extent of that Moorish line of power was Abraham Lincoln himself. If he Tashik Bey on the House of Re-Awakened Minds channel on YouTube, he has a bust of Abraham Lincoln, and it shows what Abraham Lincoln's face looked like from like a sculpture, a bust of it. And it's verisimilitude means art that looks like real reality. Verisimilitude, the verisimilitude of that bust of Abraham Lincoln, it looks more like anything than Abraham Lincoln that you've ever seen in a picture before. It looks more like him, and you can see the negroid features, what would be scientifically called negroid features, and you can see the inheritance in him. He looks like kind of similar like myself, which would be like a mulatto man, Afro with the Afrocentric features, but with a combination of maybe Caucasian, in that he was fair enough to be president. But he was, according to Tashik Bey, he was a Moorish man, Abraham Lincoln, and his assassination represents an actual pivot of power, and it was a successful coup d'etat of the actual old guard of the power. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's where America went from being a republic to a democracy, and because the actual power shifted right there. And then, according to Tashik Bey, when you refer to the Reconstruction period of the South, at that period, when you refer to the Reconstruction period of the South, that refers to reconstructing the history, not the infrastructure. And that would conceal the maneuver that took place there, and also the baseball and the footing that we exist on now. And if you ever had enough of a problem, like you had something to get all the way onto the courts, and there was something significant about something unique that happened to you, the actual precedents at play of what's going on for you now, the footing of where you're at now, if you're in America, it would come down to this finer baseball that Tashik Bey talks about, if you knew what you're getting into, or what you're already born into in America. But then another thing that he said is that going back all the way through was called colonialism, but then further to the Roman Empire, at least in the Christian era, you have the three M's of mercenary, military, and missionary. I want to say that's significant about what's going on now. Is what you can extrapolate from that is that you have the tandem features of mercenary, military, and missionary. That's actually how power. That's power. That's the application of power. The soft, the good, bad, the indifferent. The soft, the active, and then the transcendent. For example, say you have law enforcement, right? So you have in America, for anything, real law enforcement is not about like say training day stuff like that. That stuff is that's like child's play. Like riding in cars like that and surprising the bad guy. That's child's play. What real enforcement would have to do would be intelligence. So the real intelligence is you probably get to see whatever you see is what you get to see. So when you see people in uniform, these immaculate officers in uniform, that's to give you the semblance of power because the appearance of power is part of power. But that's probably not the way that law enforcement functions. There's a word called Moffat. If you have a actual law enforcement officer, a real active agent, they wouldn't reveal their identity because that would be to betray leverage. So they would be concealed in regular plain attire, but also a business owner. Sometimes like I was actually approached by a business owner in Moffat last summer. I was in Minnesota, and I was playing music, and at that time I had blonde extensions in my hair, and I was in a well-to-do. This is actually it's kind of sad because the area is called Selby. Like some people from Minnesota, they would hear Selby side, and they would think that's a formidable name. That name holds weight. It does hold weight in the streets, but actually the deeper weight is actually gentrification because Selby was gutted by gentrification and it's still under gentrification now. And the real heinous outcomes, both in on the street side, but also within people's homes, is actually is aftermath of gentrification because Selby was a beautiful neighborhood, a beautiful black neighborhood among many in America, traditionally as Rondo. Then it was severed by 94, which goes all the way to California. When they put the freeway infrastructure in the 50s as part of the Cold War, but when they did that, they severed Rondo into Selby side on the south of 94 and Frogtown on the north of it. And there's been a lot of fighting and fallout unrest in that community because of what that did economically into the cohesiveness of it. But to this day, if you go to Selby, like towards the capital, very close to the capital, St. Paul of Minnesota, but also St. Paul, about maybe a mile. The Selby runs parallel to Summit, where the governor's mansion sits, where the governor lives, near Summit in Lexington. Then, which is parallel to Selby, about 4 or 5 blocks, or probably about 5, 6 blocks south of Selby, but parallel. Then you go about just a mile north of that, and then a mile to a mile and a quarter, and you're at the very capital and also the famous cathedral. But just about a quarter mile prior to that, you have some very well-to-do cafes, and those are an actual extension of gentrification, and they're blatant gentrification. How well-to-do they are. But I was in one of them because they can be a decent place to do music. And this the older man approached me and he said, "Man," because for him to appreciate long hair, it says a lot because he grew up during a time where long hair wasn't tolerated of men. And so he came up to me and said, "Yeah, a lot of times I don't understand the long hair and the braids, but I really like how you did that. It's really well done." When he did that, he came up to me. It was actually like it was very picture it was like it could have been a photo op because here I am, a person of color, a musician. Here's a person who would seem like the establishment. He comes from older iteration. Hey, what's up? I'm back. I had to tap out for a second to get another power source, but I'm gonna keep running with this. And I want to say that with this one, this is not. Someone say someone say you cute as ever, but I don't know who that was with the avatar. If that it says Papa Bear. So the first time I had somebody in here that gave it a shout out how I look, it had been someone named Papa Bear like that. But that could, for all I know, that could be a fly honey like that. But I want to keep rolling with the content. But what I was trying to say is this video itself is not, this message is not a spiritual message, and it's not intended to define anything or to frame anything as spirituality goes or holy figures go in itself. This is about the mechanics of power and some of the aftermath of this is about human goings on and dealing with a topical issue that has to do with the strikes that were sustained and how that has to do with power and authority. And so that's the only reason I'm gonna go touch upon up to and including the what we have for the church, which I'm saying is interchangeable with the Roman state, of the Roman power state interchangeable with the church currently, and all the way down to our current goings on, our daily goings on. But it matters as the fighting goes, potential fighting goes. But um, so what I was saying is that according to Tashreeq Bey, he himself is a Moorish man. He's from Trinidad. He's a Trinidadian. He's a man from Trinidad. I learned that by talking to him. I've talked to him personally. And I've also talked to his daughter because on the House of Reawakening Minds, they have some advertisements for some different like products, like herbal products and stuff like that. And when I looked into some of those products and some of those books, I was speaking to a woman there, and that woman was actually, she was the daughter of Tashreeq Bey, and she tells me that her mother is actually who taught him law. So when you hear him talk, he can talk about jurisprudence and the science of law, the philosophy of law, on outstanding, sublime, exquisite terms that actually it reveals a lot about history and even spirituality, because in the deepest sense, you cannot separate history, spirituality, science, law, economics, politics, animal husbandry. There's actually the actual disciplines themselves, the fields of understanding. They're not distinguishable the one from the other when you understand them on a deep level. But I guess like to riff on that a little bit, I want to say think about college for a minute, right? Think about people that go to college, right? They go to college and they're learning books, right? So you're learning a book about biology, right? When you go to learn about biology,
I'll be in the gallery.
imagine there's a school over here for biology. There's a bunch of biology students there, right? They're studying there. Now they've spent thousands of dollars. Their families are spending tens of thousands of dollars for one semester to learn about the human body, about biology.
You can't have no parole.
There's also they're in a well-to-do building that's funded by that type of expenses, but also there's security there. Now here I walk up there, right? I walk up to the biology building, and I just stand outside and play my guitar outside the biology building. The security will come to me like, "Hey man, what the hell are you doing here? Hey, what's up, man? Don't you know this is you got a reason to be here?" Oh no, man. I was just sitting here, man, because it just seemed like a decent place to be. Oh, what is this place? This is the college. But what are you doing here? You gotta have a pass to be here, man. So they're up in the biology class, but here go me, right? I'm a biological being. There's nothing that they're studying that I'm not. There's nothing about biology that I'm not an example of. I could have said, "Hey man, I heard there's a biology test up there, and I just wanted to give them. I wanted to be inspiration. I wanted to remind them, because I know it's very expensive to be here, and I wanted to just wave at them so that they can look at my distal my phalanges, and that they could be reminded of they could see my phalanges, and it give them an insight so that they wouldn't forget one part of the test like that. Because what I'm saying is that these biology students are spending so much to learn about biology, but they could care not one less, iota less, about an actual biological being, a human being. They're going to learn about the human body. Here goes an animate, organic, living being, but you are human refuse to that, because they're not interested in learning. They're not interested in the human body for the sake of the body. They're interested in understanding it in the finest terms, to control it, to monopolize it, so that it can be power. So I'm saying that these schools and learning things in these scientific terms are a means of gentrification, because it amounts to power and leverage. And so they're not wanting to learn about the human body. They're wanting to leverage their understanding of the human body for so that they can have more privileged seats of entitlement and more enjoyment of life on arbitrary terms, at the expense and marginalization of other people, the very people they're learning about. You could say the same thing if they were learning about animals. They're learning about, you have a veterinary school to learn about dogs, but they got some stray dogs outside the veterinary building like that. These stray dogs are going to be a damn problem for them, because they're not concerned about dogs, canines for the sake of canines, unless they have a beautiful heart, but that's something different. they're wanting to learn about it so that they can make money with it. And so I'm saying that's a lot about what schools are about. Schools are seats of entitlement. They're paying money so that they can have proof of entitlement, proof of title to jobs, to standards of living like that. But a lot of times it's the opposite. It's the antithesis of what it's about. Every once in a while you get an advertisement come on your feed or something like that, and the advertisers seem angry with you. They never met you before, but because you're a problem they're trying to solve. They're trying to solve this thing of you that's your agreement or whatnot. But in the same way, the students, they're trying to solve some field. They're trying to solve engineering. They're trying to solve math. They're trying to solve the human body. They're trying to solve music. They're trying to get to the bottom of this problem of theirs, is how can we make more money than somebody else? How can we get a leg up on somebody else based on this particular part of understanding? But all of this, the disciplines and the fundamental level, they're all connected deeply. And when the one way that you know, like, how would you know somebody that's high level anything? How would you know somebody that's advanced anything? How would you know when you're getting to be advanced? You've been watching YouTube this long. How would you know you're getting to be advanced in it? The way you know you're getting to be advanced is when you start making connections between things that would seem to have nothing to do with anything to do with it together. So I'm gonna make a connection on this video between something that would seem like nonsense, like dating stuff, like a lot that would seem like nonsense to a lot of people. Some of the older iteration of dating content about like maybe 10 years ago, before it became mainstream, and then the actual contributions of Tajrik Bey, how that could how that could have anything to do with it. So I'm saying I met Tajrik Bey's himself and his daughter, but and when I watch him on YouTube, I'm impressed by his jurisprudence and what he knows about law. But his daughter tells me that actually his former wife, her mother, had been the one to teach him, and I think she still runs a school. It's called like the Zion Law School or something like that. And so they teach. That's a reference for anybody who's interested in what I'm saying about Tajrik Bey and that type of learning. But he's from Trinidad, and he understands himself as a descendant of the Moors, and he understands the American nation empire itself as an extension of the Moorish foothold and power base that was mutinied and confiscated from its descendants and inheritors by America, what's called America itself, at least the interest there. But what he says is that going back in colonialism, the feature and also the application and function of colonialism is the 3 M's: mercenary, military, and missionary. And you wouldn't see how mercenary, military, and missionary have anything to do, because you'd say that, okay, military is this righteous thing, people serve their cause, they do this thing now. It's interesting also how military, what's understood as military, doesn't change as you would think it would with the times, because when you think about military now, you think about boots and rolling in the mud and stuff like that. But some of that's reminiscent of like other periods in the human experience, horrible experiences, like say in the mid 60s / 70s in Southeast Asia, in Europe in the 1940s, in Europe in the before that, in America in the 1860s. But now things are a lot different, like with technology. And so why is that stuff so anachronistic or reminiscent of the older ways of doing that? But I'm saying that a lot of that is like a game, but the way, so if you can't get to get a confession out of somebody, I imagine like with police officers, you need good cop, bad cop. So a lot of things, you can't do things without a character, right? You can't make certain statements without a character. You can't make certain, like they say, fighting is about styles. Fighting is about styles. You can't say who's the best fighter. You can't even say Mike Tyson's the best fighter. He's dead. I wouldn't want to get in a ring with Mike Tyson, but he can be beat. He has been beat. Anything can be beat, because there's no perfect style. Otherwise, because style is seamless. It's unending. It's ceaseless. So any style can be checked by another style. That's also what makes life viable, is that power itself doesn't get out of hand, because power can be checked by power, and power is constantly checked and rechecked. So if you were to say omnipotent, omnipowerful, that's almost an oxymoron in itself, because it wouldn't be power if it was unchecked, because without resistance, there's no expression of power without resistance. power is to overcome something. So if something was completely uniform without any resistance possible, there wouldn't be power possible in that, because there wouldn't be enough torque in that. But with that too, the application of power in human terms, it requires different players and different stances and different ethics to get the different angles. So thereby you have missionary, mercenary, and military. So military is presented as and understands itself as somewhat ethical. There's laws to military. There's for example, if a person if a besiegement to lay siege around someone, like a fort, to lay siege around it, to lay siege to something is a war crime. Because if you understand what that is, to be isolated, outnumbered, and cornered like that, just to exist like that, even without being attacked, that's beyond trauma. That's an affront to what it is to be human, to exist. And so that's a war crime. It's not called for, and it's illegal to do that in war. If you had a war that didn't have any ethics, and you said this is war, why are there any laws at all? It'll fall apart, because anything without standards will become decrepit and will cease to function. So even to have something a function, even a war machine like that, it requires the least amount of ethics and standards to exist like that. Otherwise, what are we fighting for? What are we doing? We can't even organize ourselves around a principle if we're actually that lawless. But that too, you would have the military, the formal military, the standard military, but then you also have mercenary activity. The mercenary is not over here and the military is over here. It's within and through the military. You have mercenary, you have something, say you were to sign up for the military. You sign up for the military for some reason, but also, if you're honest, there's an economic incentive. You may be promised a college scholarship. You're being compensated with money. You're thereby already existing on somewhat of mercenary terms. Because real fighting is when there's no choice. So if you had nothing to do with the military and somebody's attacking your family, that's completely different than being compensated for something. But the military understands itself as different than mercenary, but it can be different degrees mercenary. But then too, a mercenary outfit can be to different degrees also military, and check in with state sanctioned power too, which is somewhat military. But then that too, you have the missionary activity, according to Tashik Bey, is synonymous and interchangeable. My father's from Africa, from Namibia, and he has a different understanding of missionary activity than maybe people would from countries that extend missionary work, because where he's from, they had a war 1904 to 1908 against what had become Germany. Was Prussia before that, but it was Germany at that time. And there was they had been fighting over the cattle, because the cattle was their way of life. I can't, as an American, speak to how much the cattle mean to them, but it would be reminiscent of what the buffalo would mean to the Native American people, in that they're not different than their food source. But you can't speak on those terms without being blessed and brought into that. But they were fighting over that cattle, and it became, I can only imagine how fierce it would have been, because of what that meant to them. But then also, you have like the German military that was there, and they had nowhere else to be, because they probably weren't wanted where they were from. They couldn't. They had to live up to They had to compete with the Jones family. They had to make something of themselves in their adulthood. So where else to go but where the opportunity is? This other place in Africa over here. So now they're between a rock and a hard place too. The European young men like that. So the fighting became like tit for tat and horrible and traumatic, such that they sent an experienced General von Trotha to German Southwest Africa, Namibia, what would become Namibia, named after the Namib Desert when they became independent. And his solution was simply to exterminate the people, man, woman, and child, the Herero and Nama people. My father's people are the Herero people. He's Ovambo and Herero. Ovambo people Africa has tribalism, and Ovambo people suffer a lot of tribalism in that area. And I have family. I met people in America who were also Herero like my dad, but they would make racist comments, tribal comments against Ovambo people. But my father's Ovambo and Herero. But both the Herero and the Nama people suffered that order. And so they would either be marched east until the unforgiving desert. Even though they're desert people, they couldn't sustain that part of the desert, and the men, women, and children would perish, or they would be captured in these internment camps, and they would be emaciated, starved, and or massacred and there's photos of that online if you look up the German war in Southeast Africa, and those pictures of those emaciated human adults are exactly reminiscent of the World War II era in Europe. And I want to say that that's actually that was the actual breeding ground of the cadre and the tactics of World War II and what happened in World War II of those the camps like that, the actual breeding ground of that, the staging of that, because all things have a precedent. The actual precedent of the Nazi period was the war in German Southwest Africa, at least if you merely look at those pictures, but also the order, the actual sanctioned genocide order. And but that would have got that come to a head like that, that fighting like that, there would have been missionary activity that would have took place before it got to actually fighting like that. Because when missionary people come into an area, they set the standard of what's right. That is, the buck stops with the missionary, because who's going to argue with the missionary? But if there's something arbitrary, like the dealings going on, what's to be done about the cattle, what's fair, what's not, what's justice, what's not, the missionary would have had something to say about that. And also with it tipping off like that, whatever would have been bogus, it would have happened somewhere around the watch of the missionary, because nobody had more back then in the whole world, but especially in anywhere European based. There you can't actually understand how much power religion had back just a few generations. Even a young person watching this, if you're less than 25 years old, it'd be hard for you to understand how much sway religion has had, even in America, even in my lifetime. But going back that many decades to the beginning of the 20th century, it would have been unquestioned power like that. But it can still fail and lead to fighting, which is what happens. So my dad has a different understanding about missionaries that's not always flattering. But for you to have power, you have to have different maneuvers. So like, say you have like in America, right? Like America, there was recently, Trump went to war with the cartels. He made a stance to go to war with the cartels. But if you recall, all of the fighting between America and the cartels was not only the American forces per se, the military per se, law enforcement per se. You also had biker outfits fighting against the cartel, and also doing atrocities against the cartel and sustaining atrocities from the cartel. That's an example of de facto / mercenary power, which is that a lot of people, if you know better, you wouldn't want a problem with bikers. But one of the reasons is because bikers are very savvy people. They're actually a lot of them are actually law enforcement, and they double as, it's kind of like if you could imagine the Klan, heaven forbid, back in the past in the United States, of law enforcement, and the Klan itself was a mercenary de facto form of power, an application of power where the above ground power, the law enforcement, is what exists in the veneer, in the surface, which is allowed to exist, which must exist, framework and footing of the entire caste structure and the society structure. Because even in something completely corrupt like the antebellum South, I think it's called antebellum. I think that means before war. I think antebellum means before Civil War. Postbellum means after Civil War. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Postbellum South would have been worse than antebellum. No, antebellum South, pre Civil War, would have actually been the worst. You had the atrocity of slavery, but actually after the Civil War, the atrocities were worse because African Americans had more of an opportunity to do well for themselves, and a lot of the atrocities with the Klan were actually against well-to-do African Americans. They were actually jealousy. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, the Klan got to its fever pitch in the 1930s. That's well after the Civil War. That's the postbellum South. So the actual Klan activities were worse after the Civil War. But that's an example of de facto / mercenary power, which is that they can do certain maneuvers that the regular sanctioned cops can't. But you need to have the appearance of the sanctioned cops to have the whole society work. So because if things were above board, the activities of the Klan couldn't exist, because like, wait, you're the sheriff. So if I punch my wife in the face, heaven forbid, you shouldn't even joke like that. If I punch my brother in the face, and then I gotta go see the sheriff about it, right? I gotta have at least a little credibility in the sheriff that he can actually see it, because I gotta at least be able to, I have to have some credence, right? To take advantage of me, I have to be gullible enough. I have to have some credence. I have to float you some credit, right? But you're saying you're doing this, but then you're running down on that person that owns a store over there that's minding his business, and you're terrorizing his family. but I gotta check in with you because I punched my no good brother in the face. So that whole nonsense, that whole charades, it wouldn't work unless you separated things and you had the veneer of things. So the veneer of things is that you have the law enforcement over here, and then you have the horrible clan over here who are also actually the same people or have the same objectives and interests and are serving the same interests. So too with the military and mercenary. So too with law enforcement, and sometimes like you have like biker activity, but then also the missionary is part of that. Now I want to say, imagine this, right? So I was I've had some I've had a couple of things in my life. I've had people that mean things to me, but I never just been out walking in public with a beautiful thing on my arm like that. That hadn't been my life like that. But I would imagine that that would be fun. But also you could have some hellified things that would happen. How if you imagine how petty people are even when you're not doing well, you just got something cool going on, right? You just got a damn dinner plate going on, right? Nothing, you're not bothering nobody. You just got some chicken. You hooked up some chicken like that, right? You get some glances like that, people coughing in your food like that. Some you get people getting nasty like that. But if you had something bad around your arm like that, you can only imagine like what kind of shots could come out your way, like what kind of player hating stuff. My dad was like that because my mom and my dad were deeply in love, and they're still together now after 40 years. We have they have a neighbor, this brother. He holds their place down. He's a Hispanic brother from Chicago, living in Minnesota. But I spent time with him. He was taking me out. He took me to a gun store because he's like, hey man, you need to know what kind of stuff is out here, man, because it's crazy out here. But he's very comfortable around firearms. That's called a martial person. People who are comfortable around deadly implements like that. That's a martial person. But he was saying, man, you should be humble because you actually have the example of your dad, man. You have the example of you grew up under your dad. You still have your dad in your life now, and whatever your parents have together, man, because he sees them, he's their neighbor. Whatever your parents have together, man, that's special, man. Because I love my dad, but my dad was never there because my mom wouldn't let him be around. He had some real problem with his dad being around. But he's saying your parents they're actually rare. Because he said in that state where Minnesota, there's probably only so many people that are together after that many years with that strong of a relationship. Also, there's probably only so many men like myself that had that example and also have their parents still together. So I'm saying my dad is a part of an interracial relationship with my mom, but my dad's never been one to hide. My dad's always been very public with my mom, with myself, with my mom. And he's always been in public with her. A lot of people wouldn't appreciate how much of a warrior you have to be with a woman on your arm in public at large, at all. Then that too, interracial, interethnic marriage relationship like that. A lot of people wouldn't know how much of balls that has to be, but also how much of competence, because there'd be flack behind that. But imagine, but I listened to this brother back in the day called R.S.D. Tyler, and love is a funny thing. Love is a finicky thing. It's a simple thing, but it's a profound thing. And if you think about it, like what makes you fall in love with somebody? It's the littlest thing. You don't even know what it is that made you fall in love with somebody, but it's a certain way you look at somebody. How may you get somebody to look at you like that? How may you get somebody to keep looking at you like that? That's not child's play, but also that can be affronted, that can be affected, that can be impacted by other people. It can be, and other people throwing shots too. It can be. So what R.C. Tyler said is, imagine this. Back then he's since lost I think some of his health, so he's not as physically what he was, but he was very socially savvy. He had high level social competence. Like he could walk up to a bar or something like that, people outside a bar, and he could just walk up there and make a whole bunch of friends like that just by saying something crazy. But he'd be like, imagine this. Imagine you were at a mall with your lady friend, right? And when you're at the mall with your lady friend, somebody like himself walk up to you, and when they walk up to you, they're like, "Hey man, what's up, man? Can I get? Do y'all know where that Journey store is at? like you know, it's that it'd be that Journey store up here, right? And then your girlfriend's like, oh yeah, I heard of that. That's over here. Ha ha ha. And then he's like, oh, you know about that? And then he just say one thing to your girl, right? Like, he just say one little clever thing to your girl, right? That could impact the way that she look at you. Just because he was forward enough, right? He actually disrespected you, her man, by the way he stepped up to by the way that he broached you, the way that he opened you and your girlfriend like that. He just walked up to, like that, and he assumed familiarity like that. That he also flexed like that, and he was also confident like that. And so that in itself could change the way that that woman looks at you irrevocably, changeably. She may not be able to look at you the same way. Your interactions together may be different because all the things that you say, do, and hear and experience make you a different person. So the two of you are now different people that this person did that thing to you, because real things are very delicate. Real, like a baby in utero, a tree in the that's growing in the ground is very, very delicate. So too is love like that. But love actually never stops to be delicate like that. So that's how delicate love is, but that's how much can change just by how somebody would step to you. But what about missionaries do that? Because does that not remind you, if you're in a mall, about, because missionaries will just step to you like that in a mall like that, right? They just come up to you, hey man. So I've never, like I said, I've never been out having like ladies on my arm like that, right? But I have been out. I have my guitar on my arm because I do music. So imagine so like a lot. So what I'm saying is that, like, missionary stuff, right? Okay, so a lot of times if you do something unique, right? Like somebody came on this channel and they say like, hey, you look cute AF. Somebody said that about me, right? I would say that I probably have my own style, because I take creativity towards my style, and I improvise and I try new things that make me have my own look like that. But sometimes if you have enough of your own look, but you look like you, because I don't check in with nobody ass like that. I don't check in with nobody ass. I'll say one thing that I'm proud of right now as I make this video is that I don't check in with nobody ass, but I still have to get, I still have like rude things happen to. I have rude things happen to me every day. Like, like I have a lot of rude things happen to me. There's no day go by in my life that something rude as hell don't happen to me. There's no such thing for me as a day on earth without some rude ass thing happen to me. But I still don't check in with nobody ass like that. But I'll be in public, I'll be doing my music thing like that, or just doing anything like that, and somebody with a religious background will come up to me and they'll say, hey man, are you okay? Do you believe it? So some things are a bind. Some things are an actual double bind that you would even offer them. It's a bind. So if you go up to somebody and you say, man, hey man, so you're say you were just a public person, right? You're a public figure speaking, and somebody go up to you and say, hey man, what do you think about LGBT? That's a bind right there, because you'd have to either say, I don't do that. I don't think I'm not into that. Now you just affronted a huge swath of population that are into LGBT. Or you say, oh yeah, I'm with that. Now you just affronted people that understand themselves as traditional, because people religious that they wouldn't do that. Or maybe you say you somehow you get past that, right? But then they say, what do you think about LGBT? And then there are more also letters now, or symbols now, that are with that are also that are challenging to what somebody says is attractive, decent, viable, humane. So that just that question alone, and someone just go up to you and say, hey, what about LGBT? That's a bind, because there's no correct answer to that, and it prompts you. The only correct answer is honesty, but life is actually polarizing. So in duality, so you can't be. Everyone likes to be agreeable, but you can't do that without being agreeable. You can't do that without offending someone or running somebody off. You can't be yourself in this life without offending people. But I just want to say, but another one would be, hey man, do you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ? That's also a bind, because you can't. You're saying you. It's difficult to answer that without you can't answer that simply. You either you can either you can acquiesce to it, you can capitulate and say, yes, I do believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. Then they'll say, oh, can I pray with you then? Now, when they pray with you, they just assumed authority. You may have actually been a Christian longer than they've been alive, but because they were so bold as to approach you and ask you, and they conduct themselves, they present themselves in the name of that, they actually assume authority, and they actually assume the helm of your faith right there, and your relationship to what you call Jesus Christ right there. Your understanding of that, they can frame that and affect that for you because they seize the initiative by stepping to you like that. Or if you were to say no, you would have to preface that. So there's no actual simple way to answer that without offending them, because they actually already offended you by stepping to like that. Because really, if you're in a mall is actually not a religious venue. A mall is not an appropriate place to accost somebody religiously. A mall is not a place to do that. But so too is not the general the earth itself. If you're not in a place that a gathering of that for religious purposes, the earth itself is not an appropriate place to accost a human being and press them for their faith without inciting conflict, if you don't want conflict. But if you had like somebody, if you were in a mall and you were with like a partner of yours, and somebody would just walk up and they're like, hey, so say two people walk up to you and your woman, and they want to talk to you about Jesus Christ. One is that you know these men from a can of paint. You don't know these men from a religious can of paint, and they could assume be criminals for all you know, whether or not they're actually with the church or not. They could be criminals for all you know. So they're bogus to put you in that position like that. First of all, but that too, there's assuming so much with you, so much authority, is that they're actually so a lot of things are about frame. If you were to look about like things about dating or about human interactions, there's about frame. Whose understanding of this interaction is overwhelming, is prevailing in this interaction? As I'm interacting with someone, is my understanding of our interaction or their understanding of this interaction, which neither of that is independent, it's interdependent, of this interdependent appreciation of this interaction, whose stance and frame and understanding is more cohesive, it is more convincing, is more prevailing, is more consequential. That's called frame. So, and that has impact in interpersonal relationships, but also within yourself. You have a frame within yourself, your interaction with yourself and with your experience and with your environment and other people, with yourself. But when people come up to, when missionaries come up like that, they can impact that frame for you, but also for your partner irrevocably. So that could be as heinous as if somebody were to walk up to you, like a playboy were to walk up to you and your girlfriend and just say something, like to seize the opportunity to say something to really impact the way that you guys look at each other and then the way that you guys feel about each other. But a missionary could do the same thing. But what I'm saying is that a lot of this thing about like so like with fighting and stuff like that and military stuff like that is that so you have like police officers, right? So you have military, mercenary, missionary, and military. But then also for actual police work, like the actual control of people, controlling people, you have again military, mercenary, and missionary. And a lot of people would say like if you listen to like a lot of okay, right? Imagine you had a I'm gonna blow somebody's cover and shit, right? So I'm at a I was at an accommodation, and yesterday on my first day I'm like, hey, does somebody know do you know where the bathroom is? And she was like, hey man, I don't know man, but I'm just in here to peep all the snitches, man, because it be snitches up in here. I'm just trying to have eyes on all the snitches and shit. And but he was just kind of crazy like that. But that, for all I know, that could be a cop, and that's exactly what a cop would say to keep their cover cool. But if you wanted to reveal a lot of cops, imagine this, right? A lot of people say like a lot of people that are like street, or they do like street music, they're all about street, right? They're all about making money, right? But they're also not about cops, right? They're like, yeah, man, fuck the cops, man. Like even take your boy Ice Cube. I'm a fuck it, man. Fuck it. Take the gloves off. Fuck it, man. Take your boy Ice Cube, right? So here go Ice Cube back in the day with NWA, right? Fuck the police, right? But now here he go political organizing, right? Now he's not bad to do that, but he has an investment in the status quo, that is the establishment of human beings, the consensus of adults, the status quo. Ice Cube himself has an interest in that now as an adult, that he's politically active or gives a damn at all. That you can't be You cannot be something that you're not. So that he has that bent now, that capacity now, that interest now, he would have had to have it even back then in NWA in the latent stage. So what that's an example is that the very people who are saying fuck the police exactly are the police, are the establishment. They're the other end of the police because they have the same interest. That is, they all love money. The cops and the good guys and the bad guys, they love money, but it takes good guys and bad guys to make money work, but also missionary too to make money work. So I'm saying every single person that has us that feels a way about police, likely that's because they are the police. Not that they are checked in with the police, but they have the same interests. They live and die by the money. But you need police to make money because what? So you say fuck the police, right? You say fuck the police, but you're about making money, right? But what do you spend your money on? Would you spend your money on like a house, right? Because you'd want like a decent place to live, house, or even like a car, right? So you buy a car, but you expect nobody to fuck with your car because it's your car because you own that car, right? So you would actually need police work so according to Pat Patterson, who is like a music teacher, he's a prolific content creator about songwriting. He says that there's no property without protecting it. So if you can't protect it, it's not your property. So if people are interested in making money, the actual money doesn't exist as we have it now because that's fiat. But what we do have is the rights to property. That's what we were fighting about. It's about the rights to property because the money, paper fiat money is both. It's not symmetrical with value. You'll find that out if you try to buy something for yourself that's valuable enough, and you're not of the type of person that belongs having that. You'll find out that that money is worthless, such as that is receive a car with no damn transmission in it, and it costs you pay $6,000 for a car that has 70,000 miles on it at the most. You receive that car, you have a warranty. By the way, this has a warranty, but you receive it, it has no damn working transmission. You discover that after 1,000 miles. Then you see about the warranty, but to find out about the warranty, you have to have the car looked into. That costs you $500 out of pocket to have the dealership, the same company of the deal, not the same company that sold it, but the same make as that model, the same make as the car. Have them look at it, cost you damn near $300-400 just to have them look at it. Then while they're looking at it, they find out, oh yeah, it's a transmission. It didn't take a rocket scientist. Now the damn insurance actuary got to get out there to check it out, but that's costing you time because you still have to make money too, right? Because you still have bills too, right? And the actual insurance agency gets out there. They communicate with the dealership that's fixing it for you, the dealership that sold it to you, the auspices, the terms of your warranty, and you find out that the transmission, the car costs $6,000. The scrap metal car costs $6,000. It costs $1,000 to have it sent to your ass. Then when it goes bad, it costs $300 to $400 to have it checked out. Then it's also costing you time while it's not working. Then finally, after playing phone tag, you figure out that the warranty is only worth about $2,500, but it costs at least $5,000 to $6,000 to $7,000 for a new transmission, depending on who does it. Then the service of the transmission is another $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000. That's potentially anywhere from $5,500 to another $9,000 at least to have the damn transmission fixed on the car that doesn't work, and that warranty is only worth 1/3 of that transmission itself without the labor itself, that damn warranty that came with it. But if you wanted to fight that, you could take that up with the state attorney or something like that, and you could go to lawfare about that. But you're going up, you this minor person, this you don't have the resources or the time to do that. You're going up against the apparatus, the beast of that car, that used car industry. And actually, if you had enough justice handed to you, that could upset the way business is done, and the way so that there's not an actual precedent or interest in actually addressing your situation without upending that entire beast of an industry that's predicated upon taking advantage of people who need transportation in society, which is fettered about being based around the automobile, the personal automobile, as that's expedient and as that's not actually useful to the environment or human beings now. But that's to show you how worthless money is and the protection, because you can't protect that. Even if money had value, you can't actually do much to protect it yourself. So it's still not having real value. But having property, the right to property, is about the closest that we'll have to money and value and assets, such that both people that call themselves cops and people that call themselves hating cops have an interest in private property and enjoyment of advantage, and it actually take police work to get that done. So everyone is actually a cop, or exactly they have. And another thing is, like, they would say, like, according to King Noble, it's interesting that a lot of rappers, if you look at a lot of rappers that portray street lifestyles, they probably make different innuendos and references against the police. They exactly live in gated communities, or if they don't live in gated communities, they have gated cars. They have cars that are damn near bulletproof. So that's actually similar to needing protection from the police, but that is to need things that need protecting by the police. So everybody acts as just a cop like that. But then also, everybody also, you have a conscience. So everybody has to sleep with themselves at night. Everybody has to get on with themselves, and it actually, we are one another and this life. So when you do wrong to another person, or even other being, like an insect, that actually affects you, your conscience, deeply, heavily, and you never walk that down. I bet you to this day, if you're honest, those same bugs that you stepped on when you were a kid, you still feel about that away. You're really honest about yourself, that still haunts you, because that'll never stop haunting you, because that'll never stop being wrong, what you did there about those bugs like that. Or same too for people that call themselves hunting and fishing and stuff like that. It's still wrong, it's still wrong, and horror is still horror, and trauma is still trauma, what you did like that. Such that we need to ease our conscience, and that's where religion comes in like that, and missionary work. But the missionaries are not bad, but they have a function, and it has to do with power too. But when it comes to things so what I'm saying is that, like, say you had, like, according to Tosh Bay, what the pandemic was about, a lot of people would hear COVID and they don't know what those letters mean. COVID refers to Certificate of Vaccination ID, according to Tosh Bay. And just by the very name of that, the utterance of that, it can be extrapolated that was known and that was rolled out before the disease itself was rolled out, because it was a demolition mission. Just like you have like big construction projects to build buildings, you also have you have social engineers that build society, that build society like that, and also break things down. They break down communities. Like the African American community has been fettered by social engineers, and we have sustained. And the social engineers are not idiots. Like, according to King Noble, he said you gotta wash their ass like that, because they be slick like that. So, like, a lot of, like, what you have, like right now I'm in California. If you think about the suffering that California has sustained, the whole country too, because, like, America. So the world goes the way of America culturally. America goes the way of California culturally, but it goes the way of Texas politically. That can be extrapolated. According to that, I got that from Alex Jones, is that the world goes the way of America politically, but America goes the way of Texas politically. Texas is a canary in the coal mine, a litmus, a case in point, a pH balance barometer of the broader goings on of America, but also the strength of America, you could probably say. Because, like, if America got itself in enough trouble, most of the cadre and the fighting and the initiative and the know-how is going to come from Texas, pound for pound. If you had to isolate any state that was the strongest pound for pound and least of a pushover culturally and physically and intellectually, it'd be Texas, if you're honest about that. And that's in the science too. Even though they have the draw, they're smarter than shit in Texas. But then culturally, and even some of the aesthetics of the culture of the country are a lot about California. That's my contribution, to say that California is a lot of the case in point. Then for some of the things that don't work, and some of the where things come to a head in the country, I'm saying that's Minnesota. I made that commentary on this channel, is that Minnesota, the Twin Cities, is a case in point for America and also the world, about where things come to a head, and some of the most taxing, the most unfortunate, but also pivotal things that happen as the media goes, as optics go, but also as consequence goes, have been Minnesota, such as the ICE raids. Minnesota sustained some of the most ICE raids, but that's also because Minnesota has some of the most economic opportunity and educational opportunity, which is why it would attract a lot of people that are foreign born, both documented and undocumented, which is why ICE would be seated there or target there. But then also you had the George Floyd uprising and incident that affected the entire world and changed the calculus and the function of the pandemic. And then before that, you had the Philando Castile slaying in 2016. That was an atrocity that impacted police culture and accountability for police. But I'm saying that the genocide of America, the police genocide, is not limited to law enforcement. When you have unnecessary gangster activity, street activity that's still maiming people in the black community and other collateral, that's also police genocide. That's the other side of police genocide. That's a de facto mercenary style level tier of genocide. But then also the missionary part is also part of, can amount to genocide, genocidal outcomes. The setting of ethics and standards upon Eurocentric, some of the arbitrary lines and tastes and values. But also sometimes application of power, very subtle but very consequential power as missionary work goes, that can amount to genocidal outcomes. But California sustained the crack epidemic, and then that followed the economic reverberations of that, both the lucrative part, but also the gutting of the most the strongest members of the community, fathers and would-be fathers and could-be fathers and had been fathers, decimated by crack, but also the fallout in gang activity and drug selling activity that's also supported by gang activity in California, that had actually been introduced and planned by the actual think tanks and social engineers and some of your big letter universities in Southern California, at least according to Dr. Wesley Muhammad. And that's just an example of how effective social engineering is, and that we, African American people, are so horrified and terrified and suffering and being named to the present day based on some of those older iterations of social engineering all the way into the 70s and 80s at least. But according to Dr. Wesley Muhammad, in the 1960s, you had and organizing of black youth. You had the Black Panther Party like that, but then also black communities going back ancient times have always organized local level and have always had local protection and local justice. That's real, actual justice prior to the notion of a state, and which is also part of religion to have a broader state. But in Afrocentric communities, going all the way back, you always had local representative and leadership and consequences, and that's what some of the organizing had been up to at the. And you had uprisings in Detroit, at least, and California also, according to Dr. Wesley Muhammad, and that terrified the state, especially figures like the man who put the FBI in place. I can't think of that man's name. There's that famous man who was the visionary of the FBI, and his prerogative, his fear, but also his prerogative was to sequester and quell the potential uprising of the black communities or black figures, and so that actual energy to mobilize and protect communities locally, it's a natural part of being a Afrocentric male. Wherever we find ourselves, we're still one people like that. That actually was successfully converted to self-harm and self-hatred and into gang activities by the time of the 80s. But before that, some of it had actually been righteous in organizing and protecting along racial lines, as African American people had been marginalized on racial terms or ethnic terms. But then so too was the COVID-19 pandemic. That was another social engineering application, and also like a control, because at that time, at 2019, that's when a lot of the baby boomers were exactly about to come of age, and they were about to start drawing retirement benefits. So you could say that the country has went bust different times economically. At least the financial ledgers have went bust. That happened in 2008, and then with the banks went bust, and then that was the banks went bust, and that was that was swept under the rug, and that they threw wheelbarrows. They threw astronomical wheelbarrows worth of fiat at the banks to make the banks to ease that over so that they could keep going past that blemish, which is actually a failure. So if you were living at the time of 2008, if anybody said, "Hey man, you live with such and such, you're a failure," no, actually, the whole country was a failure. Because the whole country actually failed right there. So whatever it means to be a loser, that's what the actual country itself had actually lost itself right there. So all the pretensions of I'm like Madonna, like I'm because we are living in a material world, and I am a material girl. You know that we are living in a material. So her material ass and everybody that would have looked like a loser next to that, everybody's ass was actually a loser at least by 2008 because that whole thing failed. The whole consumer reality paradigm exactly failed at least by 2008. But then it was blushed over. It was gushed over. It was swept under the rug. But then that too was about to come to a head again because by that very calculus, by that very fake baseball, you're gonna have to do something about these people that are gonna start drawing their retirement benefits because the baby boomer age was a big generation. There was a lot of people born in that, and when that happened, they were gonna have to be retired at. They say that the baby boomers were one of the most selfish generations. Like my parents and their family members were baby boomers, and I'm just gonna say right there, just to get messy with it. My family are some selfish ass people. That like my mom's siblings, except for her brother, with the exception proves the rule. So her brother was like the youngest of them, and he's cool. He's helped me out. But like my aunt and them, they're some selfish ass people. So these baby boomers had been selfish, but they were also going to be collecting those checks. Best believe. So with the pandemic, with the COVID, they would have been scared for their life, and the society was about to lose itself. It couldn't keep up with itself at the current rate of spending. So that pandemic was like a negative jubilee. So a jubilee is a forgiving of debts, but that pandemic, it brought everything to a halt like that. It stopped things so that all the mid-level business, the people that were doing well for themselves, but also going to be entitled to drawing different social security, or also just like spending their money the way that they want to as it would serve them, that was all gutted by the pandemic. So only the people that were big enough got to get past that. The people who were intended to get past that got past that and came out better for it. But so wherever you gain, you lose. So the pandemic made a lot of millionaires, but also a lot of fortunes were lost and a lot of lives were lost.
Get your stuff on there. I don't want to move it to the side. Anyone needs to say.
Oh sure. So that pandemic was a controlled demolition of because the society, they wouldn't have been able to keep up with the fiat of the fake news. I'm sorry, the fake financial ledgers that would have been at play up to the pandemic. And then so when these people would have been getting scared, they would have been going to the hospital complaining of COVID. One is that they took the inoculation, which also decimated a lot of people. That inoculation is very arbitrary about who got different doses of that, how those doses were targeted, and it was understood who would be receiving those doses. So people got doses differently, but also there were different metrics of failed lives outcomes, like especially like heart attacks, that according to Alex Jones, that affected, that there was a proliferation of, I think they call it angina or something, like heart attack episodes of all people of all ages, from children, from infants all the way to senior people, and people falling out in sporting events like that because of what some of that vaccine was doing. That vaccine itself was an actual culling and an actual a weapon, and actually successfully murdered we probably don't know the real numbers of how many people were murdered by the vaccine doses that had the adverse outcomes that would have been understood as possible outcomes, and thereby can be appreciated as murder. But also people that would have went to the hospitals, there were different whistleblowers that appeared, like on the Alex Jones show, these nurses that were horrified by their own deeds and what they were ordered to do and what they saw done, because these people would be going to the hospital and they would go to they would receive something, they would complain of COVID symptoms, and they get something called remdesivir. Remdesivir, according to Latin, means one's death is near. I think REM is like I think that's like sleep, and then or sorry, des. So no, REM might be near. No, sorry, REM. I think REM means sleep, and Decivir means is near. I think, if I'm not mistaken. So that remdesivir was exactly actually it shut down people's organs like that. That actual it was actually is like a murder dose, a hot dose that shut somebody's organs down. That's one of the worst ways to pass on because it's so demoralizing to have a person's organs stop functioning. You're alive, but your body's not. That's horrible. That's worse than a scary movie, and that happened during the pandemic. But a deeper thing is that demolition of the pandemic, these different society will a bogus society, anything unethical, it'll come to a screeching halt at different times. And then, so to do that, you have to pass that off. You have to play that off as different things. But then that's too what the wars are about. So I think that so a lot of things you have a tremor, and then you have an after effect, and then an earthquake, and then an after earthquake, and an after tremor. So I think so some of these things are actually a function of the end of human times based on the actual, you could say it's the actual Roman Empire. A lot of people would say that the Roman Empire failed. When it failed, there was like some telltale signs and some historical things that were the undoing of the Roman Empire. I'm saying that actually didn't stop, and we're still in some of the death throes of the Roman Empire. Someone listening to that is experiencing that. I myself say that I'm experiencing that. One of them, not the only one, was World War II. Probably World War II was a function of World War One. You wouldn't have World War II the same way at the same time, the same tactics, the same reality if you didn't have World War One before that. You would have had World War One if you didn't have colonialism before that. At least. Then, so you could say that World War One. So, like for example, the colonial powers, they went to Africa, and they split up Africa like a pie, according to these arbitrary borders that are still at play today. But when those colonial powers went to Africa and they just divvied up Africa like that, they were divvying up people's lives, people's futures, people's ancestors, people's the land itself. The land loves itself. It loves its people. They decimated that. They affronted that. They raped that, and then they thought that they got scot-free. But you actually have to. There's no honor among thieves. So whatever happened in Africa that they had to split it up like that, those very same powers that sat down at the table to split up Africa, they actually come back not a few hundred years later or 50 of years later to get back all the way down to World War One. Because World War One, the same colonial powers getting it on, and we having to get to fight, because a lot of times they say during slavery is that they would make the studs fight like that, but you at a certain point you have to get a taste of your own medicine, otherwise life isn't true to itself. So every once in a while the actual bosses in them, the masters in them, the overseers in them, they get to fighting and shit too. But that doesn't mean that it's sweet, because they're gonna put us up to fighting it too, because they're not likely man enough to fight their own fights. But they're gonna have to at least get dirty a little bit. That happened in World War One, and then these colonial powers are fighting like that. But then you could say that World War II was a function of World War One. Then mass production was a function of World War II. Then the failures in 2008 of the banks, that was a function of commercialism, consumerism, mass production. That's a function of that, because all that is ran in by the banks. It's organized by the banks, and the banks ass failed like that 2008. But they didn't quit, but they failed. But this is still along the lines of the Roman Empire, because even the monarchs and the kings of India and of Europe, and the colonial states, the colonial powers, they're still checking with the church, because they still do banking, and the banking is owned by the church, and the church is still Rome. But these are still the death throes of Rome. But then that too, failure in 2008. Then 2019, COVID-19, you had to do something about a controlled demolition, about the money getting out of hand again, because even though the money's fake and the system has already failed, you still have people that you still have it operating somehow, floating on somehow, but it's still going to be even passable when people start to collect their shit like that with what they're entitled to with like their retirement and also their assets and holdings and what they want to spend and what they want to enjoy their money about. So you have to actually decimate them or bring things to a halt. 29. Now we're getting on to war. You also had the wars in the Middle East. That's a deeper thing. That's a deeper odds against the Greeks and the Romans. I think they went to the Middle East and they say, man, when will there be peace in the Middle East? Okay, when will there be peace in the Middle East? A better question would be, when has there not been peace in the Middle East? Now, if you want to say local fighting, there's always been local fighting because that's what human beings do. There's always been local antagonism, local borders, local politics, baseball, petty stuff, but also serious stuff. That's life. You're not gonna change that for the Middle East or for anywhere without changing life itself. But to conquer the Middle East, I think that's what you're saying. Not when will there be peace in the Middle East, when will this Middle East be successfully conquered? Likely that won't happen because it hasn't been done yet. But the conquesting of the Middle East that would have began with or existed with the Romans and the Greeks too, I think, but probably the Romans, and it never stopped. So as long as there's been the real turmoil in the Middle East is Rome seeking to put a foot on the Middle East, and it hasn't been done yet. Because to do it, you need missionary, mercenary, and military. But the most pivotal part of that is missionary, because missionary also runs and sets in place and has owns the rights. Because military and mercenary, they work for money. Money is about advantage. It's about private property. Private property is about rights. Rights are about missionary, the church, ethics, the highest standard. Missionary. But the Middle East ain't going for the same missionary tactics as other places would because they're not the same way. But so what I'm saying is that when you have things going on, all things have to be balanced. All things have to be brought back to balance. And some of life itself is out of balance. You could say that since mass production, the population on Earth is way more than it would. So life itself comes with rigors and taxes and dangers that keep it balanced. And even if people were to be exactly honest with each other, they say that sometimes the sun will do these flares, and there's wars that correspond with that because the sun actually has moods. I think like a lot of times you'll say like, hey man, the weather is crazy today, or hey, the weather is decent today. The weather actually is not changing. The weather actually doesn't change. The earth itself doesn't have weather. The earth has the potential for weather. The sun has moods. So the sun, you see the sun as just this straight light like that, right? But the sun actually has these UV rays. Now they would say that UV rays can be perceived by plants, and they just stop there. But the UV rays are living. If you saw them, it'd probably look more like the northern lights like that, but even finer than that. That's what you can see with the eye. It's deeper than that. There are colors that you haven't seen with the eye, but also there are emotions you haven't seen with the eye. And so the sun, it has moods, and those moods trip off the earth because the earth is high strung. The atmosphere of the earth is this high strung polarity. Earth is polarly charged. Everybody hates everybody's ass. Everybody wants the best for me and mine. That's true on the cellular level, on the plant level, on the organism level. Everybody wants their shit their way now. And they want everybody else to not have their shit so they can have their shit. That's high strung like that. That's the environment. That's the plants. That's the animals. Nobody's forgiving nobody for anything. Everybody want what they want. They're high strung like that. But then the sun, our provider, has these moods. And it makes this beautiful thing play like that. It makes the weather seem what it is. And the weather gives the variation. That's the diversity of life. That's the viability of life. That's the dynamicism of life. That makes life robust, enduring, viable, ceaseless, wasteless, living, young, rejuvenescent, living, dying, rebirth, cyclical. But it's possible because of the variation of the sun, I think, and the sun's when it gives and when it ceases, and it gives not, and it spares, and it has the desert thirsty just the way it need to be thirsty, and then it trip off the actual seasons and the actual rainfall based on the temperature, based on the polarity of the earth, based on how the sun's interacting with that, like a irrigation system that's managed by the sun, and what it gives not in its subtle light like that. But it can also set off fighting in wars like that too. So we won't not have wars, try as we may, because they're a balancing thing. But some of our numbers and our population and our standards of living are not reciprocal with the environment, because one is that we should be eating locally. So if you're taking a trip to, just imagine a jet setting person, right? So you're of European descent, right? You're 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 of European heritage, but you're born in America, and you're used to the rigors of America. Say your people are from Ireland. My family's from Ireland largely, but your ancestors are from Ireland. Your ethnicity, your genetics correspond with Ireland, but you live in the southwestern United States. So your body is a little bit. It's not that it can't be done, but your body is a little bit out of sorts to that environment, because it's a little bit arbitrary how you got there. It's not true to nature how you got there, the actual technology that got you there and that allows you to live there. Then you take a trip to Europe, and when you go to Europe, now you're in Europe, but your body is acclimated to America, where it's not from. You're used to an American diet. That American diet is also not entirely locally to the Southwest, where it should be largely to be in your strong suit. It's a global diet. It's arbitrary by being global and being rushed to you. But also your transactions online are arbitrary because it's at the speed of light. It's not checked by anything. It's not it's surplus. It's not calibrated to the rigors of life, to the bounties and also the deprivation of life. Now with the surplus you have, with the assets you have, with the value you have, that's also somewhat based on an unethical paradigm of economics and money making. Now you're spending on vacation in Europe, but when you're in Europe, you're frequenting an Indian restaurant. That Indian restaurant is feeding you cuisine that's endemic to India, with maybe food that's sourced from India or it's sourced from other parts of the world, but it's combined in it's sourced from different parts of the world, but it's in an Indian aesthetic cuisine. So the combinations are not true to any area or true to India, or if they are true to India, they're imported to Europe where you're finding it, and it's not locally sourced. It's not with local rigors. Then you're visiting Europe from America. Now, by the time you eat that food, that's so arbitrary and unbalanced, based on the rigors, the deprivations, the bounties, and the deprivations of nature, and you're enjoying it. It doesn't sit well with you. How could it actually sit well with you? Because to sit well with you is to be balanced. How could it be balanced? Now, had you taken a trip to India itself, you may have been like my friend. My friend was a European man who took a trip to India. He enjoyed local Indian food, and he got so sick as to scare him straight from eating meat for a while. Because in India of old, it wasn't just always normal to eat meat. Like some people say, "Holy cow!" In India, cows are actually holy, and if you eat meat in India at all, it's like a ballsy thing. It's along the line of drinking or doing drugs or like partying or fornicating. Eating meat is it's not brazen and ballsy, but also enjoyable. But so even if you had went to India and if you're not acclimated to there, or even if you're from there, you could have still actually got sick. But you go to Europe and you have Indian food, you don't get as sick as actually going to India, but you just get sick because. But I'm just saying how arbitrary that is, how much of how interregional that is, how global that is. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's wrong to be global like that, but it's arbitrary and it's largely not balanced. But also, there's ethics within all things, and also balances such that there's something's called externality. So if you have a business, that the reverberations, the implications of your business, how it affects people and environments is called externalities. Our goings on have externalities such that our numbers on Earth may be beyond the population that Earth can normally support. Not that Earth cannot continue to support us, because they say that, like for example, America, You could put all of America in Texas. Right now, I'm in a public accommodation for many people that are homeless, and you can take care of a lot of people's needs better by people coming together. So our individual lifestyles may not be feasible upon Earth, but our individual lives are always feasible. I don't think there's any point that we can get to as human beings where our numbers in population cannot be sustained by the Earth when we are cooperating and doing the best with what we have. There's always a future with what we have, but a lot of times that has to do with coming together and being around other people. But as private property goes, as globalism goes, a lot of things are not sustainable. But also there's reverberation. So you have all these transactions going on online all the time. Over here, you're flying over here. You're making money over here. You're making money while you sleep over here. You're having this thing rush to you. You're rushing yourself there. You're taking time off here. You're doing that over here. This thing's going out of business over here. You're starting this thing over here. That's a lot of crazy stuff going on at one time. And sometimes it comes to a head. So now all of a sudden you got a war. You got bombs going off and shit. You have to be damn near more than a rocket scientist is simple because these wars are about more than rockets. But it take a damn rocket scientist to make a rocket work. It take more than a rocket scientist to understand what these wars about. But a deeper way to understand the wars is that things got to get balanced, and you have a lot of transactions going on, and somewhere it come to a head. You got the ethics, the highest standard, which is what the law and the standing of people predicate upon the highest standard. That's like missionary work. Then you have the de facto and the sanctioned power, and then the teeth of that, the consequences of that, and then what's real about that, what's arbitrary about that, but it all comes to a head at a certain point. So then you got bombs flying over Baghdad, so to speak, and you don't know what that shit is about anymore, but it means hell, and it's a lot. So these are just some. Someone said hi, nice to meet you. Soviet Union, wow. Someone's name is called Soviet Union 808. Nice to meet you also. If you're joining me from the Soviet Union, I want to say hello to you, and I want to say peace and solidarity because there's been so much struggle and fighting on both sides of the conflict between the Soviet Union, Russia, and Ukraine. And I just want to say that war is bad news for everyone, and there's no right side of any war. It's just simply horrible on all sides of any war. And I wish you guys peace and understanding and a solution as soon as it can be available. I wish that for you guys there. I made a friend. I have a friend named Michael. He's also from Russia. I met him in Minnesota when I was in some of these accommodations, and he was a very when you meet people from the Soviet Union, it's very incredible because there are a lot of decent people. He had a lot of standards, respect. I was around a lot of adults, and a lot of us were expressing ourselves. But this man, Michael, he was older, but he was very respectful of himself first place and others that whole time. And he taught a lot. He showed me how to exist around other people while also respecting himself and staying private. He was very private while being in a public venue. And the only way he interacted a lot was that he would draw pictures of people. So he asked me if he may draw a picture of me, but he didn't get a chance to. And he drew a picture of this woman while he was there. But that was the most of his interaction. And so I just want to say thank you for checking in. And I make all my commentary in the interest of truth and life and humanity because human beings are different. We have different families, but we're one human. What it means to exist is I think is one thing. And we're all beautiful and we're all connected and we all play a part in each other's destiny. And I couldn't be myself without you being exactly who you are, all your good parts and all your strong suits. And likely you could also be yourself without me being myself and everybody else because it takes this whole world just to make you. It takes all of you just to make me. So I want to say I'm grateful for my life and being who I am. And that takes me being grateful for you because this life wouldn't be what it is without you being exactly who you are. This life wouldn't work without you being. Imagine you had this cool thing, right? Like your parents bought you this cool toy or this cool bike, but that whole cool thing, you're about to go show it off in front of the neighborhood, have so much fun with it, but that damn thing won't work unless this one little part is gonna work about it. It takes this one little part, and it won't. Like I had a motorcycle, and that motorcycle had a clutch on it, right? It's like a stick shift. But you work it with your foot on a motorcycle, but it's like this little piece. It's like a lever. It looked like that, and it's like that. It's like that, like a little L like that. And hook on that. It's a little piece like that. The clutch, how you pop it into gear and you work it like that. But if that damn thing break like that, then it's just a little lever like that, and it works, but not without stopping the bike to make it work. So I have to put it in second gear. In second gear, I can get it from 0 to any speed, but it's not as much fun without that little lever work like that. So this whole life, it don't work without each person being exactly who they are. So anything you like, it don't work without everyone that you like and don't like being exactly who they are. So everyone is just this little beautiful piece, but this whole thing don't work without that piece, your piece like that. So I just want to say thanks for checking in. And someone said, I see your point, bruh. Just a tad bit slower, King. Now, someone said this, right? Someone said they see my point, but they need it slower. I'm actually going to be introducing content, my same content, at a slower speed, because a lot of people know you can affect the speed on YouTube. So I'm going to be presenting content, my own content, at a slower speed. And when you put it at a slower speed, you can hear somebody's real attitude, their real personality, their real story. You can actually see the real themes of what they're talking about, their real experiences better if you listen to it slower, because the slow speed captures who you are and what you're really saying. So I'm going to be running back this content at a slower speed. To your point, someone said thanks. Someone said just a bit slower, and then someone says, "Is this what I think?" And someone says, "Hey, how are you, bro? I'm good." And someone said, "You talk giving me a headache." To each their own, man. And someone said, "Is this real?" And someone said, "111." Someone said, "Can you yell into the mic, please?" Someone says, "Who wins in a fight, Megatron or Power?" Oh shit! Oh shit! That's a good man. That question is better than my whole video, man. Someone said, "Who wins in a fight, Megatron or Powerpuff Girls?" I'll say Megatron wins the fight, and then Powerpuff Girls take their ass, and then now their ass locked up. So I'm saying Megatron wins the fight, but Powerpuff wins the war. Powerpuff Girl win the war. That's my 2 cents, man. But I'd rather be Megatron if I had my pick, man. And I like you know what I'm saying. I like women and stuff. I like to be impressive, but if I had to pick it, man, I just rather be fucking Megatron, man. And like, even if I had to be Megatron and I get my ass like, okay, man, would you rather be so would you rather be in a bad relationship with a Powerpuff Girl, stuck there, or would you rather be Megatron in a lot of trouble by your damn self, but you still get to be Megatron? Because even in a lot of trouble in a gulag, Megatron, no, not to be like about gulag, but Megatron is still fucking Megatron wherever he got to be somewhere. Someone said, I know Turkish guy in New Mexico who can sell you gold, but without a receipt. Oh, that shit, man. I love New Mexico. I actually grew up in New Mexico, and I know some cool Turkish people are cool, man. I was talking about like the Middle East. So if you got gold from Turkey in New Mexico, that's a cool aesthetic right there. Someone said, what's up, dude? Someone said, Carbonari, that's a cool name. I like that, Carbonari. We're all carbon-based life form. Someone said, you got a blunt. I'm actually, man, look at this, man. You be honest with yourself, man, you get to be yourself. What's the reward? You be honest enough with yourself, you get to be yourself. I'm now living my own life on my own terms where I don't gotta check in with nobody's ass. And where I'm at now, I proved to myself I can go through detox, I can go through rehab, but that's a lot of bullshit. A lot of people there aren't honest. The staff I'm not saying the staff were dishonest, but they're not entirely congruent all the time, because I'm saying the staff there, they call themselves detox, but they're also offering like RX to people like it's candy, like they're sanctioned to do it, but they act like RX is candy, so they're not all about being drug free, anything. But I'm saying I proved to myself that I can sit my ass down and detox convincingly. Like I pop on this channel back in the day, someone's like, hey man, you need to put down the drugs. So I'm like, all right, man, just as a challenge, I'll go through detox and shit. I'm the one at detox saying no to RX, all that shit. I'm up there. I'm not jonesing for nothing. I'm not asking for nothing, but I'm just trying to see what detox is about. I did detox enough to say, hey man, I think Mary Jane ain't really a problem for me, because if you want to say, most people watching this, you probably had yourself enough girlfriends in your life. I bet you if you're honest about them, girlfriends became a problem for your ass at one point. But I didn't get to have a lot of girlfriends in my whole life. I just had Mary Jane. But Mary Jane hadn't actually been a problem. What other people think about me, Mary Jane hadn't been the only problem. But I went to detox and I figured out that it had ever actually been a problem between me and Mary Jane. And now I'm at a place where I gotta check in people's ass. And also they're like, hey man, we're not messed up about Mary Jane, just don't do that shit around here. So now I'm at a place where I can do my own thing and shit and not get in trouble with my own thing and shit. And me and Mary Jane can do our thing. So I might actually pop up on here on a damn live not too long after spending time with Mary Jane and just be my damn self as Mary Jane inspired me to do so. And it ain't gotta be a problem for nobody asks if I don't say the wrong thing to stick my foot in my mouth. And I'm enough of an adult that I can enjoy my own partner, Mary Jane, and not stick my foot in my mouth around her or myself or around anyone else. So I'm gonna take someone up on that. And I say I got a blunt yet, but I got an ethical way of earning a little bit of a spendthrift. Hopefully, if I win an opportunity, and when I do so, one of my first orders of business is going to be to get back right with Mary Jane. She didn't say I did nothing wrong, but she said just don't come back without it. So I'm gonna fight, and now that it's legal for me to her to do what we got to do, up in eye shot of everybody. So I'm gonna get back on with Mary Jane, but I can't come back without having a little something to show her. We always pray God a new man wherever I find her. She's gonna be with another man. If I'm honest, man, it don't change nothing about between me and her because we'll always still be the same thing to one another. But Mary Jane gonna be with another man, so I'm gonna have to give the two of them some money just so I can rent and spend some time with her again, and so I can be myself again. Because I don't quite feel myself unless I remind myself of what it's like back in the good old time with Mary Jane. So I'm gonna come back on here and be myself. Me and Mary Jane gonna be spending some time again. Now that I'm being my own man, and that's what you get for being yourself. You be yourself, and you're gonna make a lot of people mad. Those are the people that don't belong around you, that don't mean you no good. And by the time that they fuck off from around you, you're gonna find yourself with just the same old thing that you always been, and that's probably gonna be whoever your real friend was. Your real lover is still gonna be your only still real lover, and for me, that's Mary Jane like that. Where you at? Why it's so dark? Just because I'm outside. Someone said free Iran. I say concur. I concur to that. Free Iran too, man. Because free everyone though. But free Iran too. And like I'll be honest. I'm in America. We have a lot of liberties, but America got a lot to say about a lot of people. I grew up in America. America always had a lot about to say about me. All my friends, all my family, all my colleagues, all my coworkers, all my peers in school, all my peers on the teams, all bystanders on the street, probably people in jobs, people that I don't know about. Everybody had a lot to say about my ass this whole time in America. So America got a lot to say about everybody, probably including Iran. So if I want to be free, I say salute to that. But I still say fighting ain't where it's at for anybody. You never. So someone said you definitely never came off that one trip. Yeah, you're right about that, man. I'm still on that. Someone said chopped as fuck, man. I hope you stay chopped, man. Someone said yo, what's up? Bacon Roblox. I don't really eat bacon, but OG Bacon Roblox. That's a cold ass name right there, man. You can't make that shit up, man. You can't make up certain shit, man. So OG Bacon Roblox said he's an OG and he messes with bacon in the Roblox, and I say shout out to that, man. Do you, man? Do you better than you did it yesterday, man? Papa Bear said you cute as fuck, man. I say you cute as fuck too, man. Everybody cute, man. You cute too in the right light, man. Papa Bear, I don't know if that's your avatar or not, but in the right light, everybody cute too, man. So this must be my light, and you got your light too. Megan Page said hi, Megan. Someone said, yo, where you, bro? I'm in the Sunshine State. And someone said, why you look like this? I said, because I had been boned. So Cherish Kelly said, so why you look like this? Because I had been boned. So I had been boned for the rock and roll. Thank you very much. Maze said hi. I say hi, Maze. You are amazing, Maze. 417, if that's your number, that might even be better than 420. Whatever you do on 417 might be better than 420. Kel Naya said hi. Hi, Kel Naya. Dana Gilliam just see some cool ass emojis. I don't know. I think that's a little bit iffy. Like they're not sure what the it's like an iffy emoji, but it's still cool as shit. So I say Dana Gilliam, hi. Delia Berry said hi. Hi, Delia Berry. You have a very beautiful. But a person that trained me, name was Barry. Trained me how to Nicole brother Barry. I'm not gonna say his last name because I don't want to blast him. You can't actually have a cooler last name than he has. I don't think you can have a cooler last name. Black name. His name is Barry, and he taught me how to write. He taught me a real lesson. Like some of my greatest experiences in life were the confidence and the responsibility that came transporting people as a bus driver. And I would have never had the confidence to do that without the seasoning and the one-on-one mentorship that my mentor in Minneapolis, Barry, gave me. Just a cool ass. And so Barry is, I love Barry. So Delia Barry, you have a beautiful name, Delia. And, Ego Lover, that's a cool name, man.